We're going through every armor in the game, slot by slot, boots, helmets, gloves, outfits, and finding out which sets are actually worth crafting, all the way up to the full completion bonuses. Spoiler alert, only like 3 of those are even worth your time. Some armors just are not useful in combat, but it would be unfair to rank them poorly because of that. So I've separated them into their own mini ranking for this section, starting with probably the worst of the bunch, the preacher hat and the athletic hat. These two are completely redundant because they're just worse than 2 later items. There's really no reason to use them outside of trying to get the completion effect for each armor set. Moving up to mid, we have the farmer hat and enforcer gloves. The farmer hat gives you a 20% boost to find seeds in loot. The boost sounds decent, but the constant inventory swapping to use it makes it more hassle than it's really worth. The enforcer gloves reduce fuel usage by 20%, and that is nice, but it's nothing to write home about. I should emphasize, by the way, in this list, mid means mid. It doesn't mean bad. There's just better stuff. Moving up to good, we have the farmer boots. These give you a 20% seed harvest boost. This means that when you actually harvest crops, you have a 20% chance to get an extra seed. This is good if you are using farming. The same goes for the farmer outfit, which gives you a 100% chance for an extra crop when harvesting. You'll use these at most like 3 times a week, but when you do, you will be glad you had them because they make farming that much more sustainable. The lumberjack hat comes in here too, providing 50% more wood harvest. This is definitely skippable by the stage you get this hat at this level, but if you are going to get wood, you should get this. Rogue gloves are one I'm tentatively putting on good tier. They make lock picking much easier and faster, but they also require you to carry them around or keep them in your bike, which is quite annoying. Along with it, we have the rogue hood, which gives a 20% boost to loot stage. Decent later in the game, but almost useless if you get it early in the game because of how loot stage is calculated, and it's another annoying one you have to carry around in your back pocket. Scavenger boots in the hat are a great combo for salvaging, giving 40% less stamina usage with salvaging tools and 60% more salvage XP. If you've got the spare resources to make these and you're doing a salvaging run, there's no reason not to have them. Which brings us, I think, to the heavy hitters, the amazing tier of the non-combat items. Enforcer glasses in the Ranger hat have the exact same boost and are a strict upgrade of both the preacher hat and the athletic hat. They both offer a 20% discount on purchases and sales from the trader, which is definitely a must-have if you are playing with those. Miner gloves and the helmet are also amazing, giving 50% more ore block damage and a 30% harvest bonus. This allows you to harvest blocks faster and extract more ore from each block, an obvious choice if you're big into mining. The same goes for salvaging gloves, which just give you a 30% bigger boost to salvage harvest. Which brings us to, I think, is the best non-combat utility armor piece, the nerd outfit. This gives you 50% more skill points from crafting magazines. As someone who hates the magazine system, I need anything that lets me get through it, and this is an absolute must-have. As for any non-combat completion bonuses, they're all pretty meh. Biker reduces fuel usage, which is strictly the same as the enforcer gloves, so just use them instead of switching into an entire biker outfit, unless you happen to already be wearing the full outfit. Scavenger gives you 20% better loot. Again, just use the rogue hood unless you happen to be already wearing the full scavenger outfit. Don't go out your way for this. And the rogue's completion boost is 30% more cash and dukes and loot. Situational, I really wouldn't recommend carrying around 4 pieces of armor just to be able to loot 30% more cash and dukes and loot, and I wouldn't really recommend wearing the rogue outfit most of the time anyway. I actually forgot about the lumberjack outfit's completion bonus when I was doing the original recording for this video, but here in the good tier for completion bonuses, we have the lumberjack outfit because it doubles your wood harvest. Now, miner gives you 35% less degradation with tools, which is good if you do play with item degradation as it makes your items last longer. Otherwise though, kinda mid. But you know what's not mid? The sponsor of today's video. World of Sea Battle. World of Sea Battle is a free-to-play ship-based action MMO set in the golden age of sail, where you can play as a pirate, complete quests, fight your enemies, and build your ultimate fleet. You can even join guilds and have faction wars, or just build a trading empire if you're chill. It features more than 50 unique ships with full customization and hundreds of potential builds. You can play as world-famous ships like the HMS Victory, or use Pirates of the Caribbean-inspired ships like the Black Prince and the Red Arrow. The next update, Naval Supremacy, features an overhaul to smuggling and the economy with greater rewards and higher risks. 8 new ships, the new specialist system which replaces the old special crew system, and reworked trader tension and reputation mechanics to reward smarter and more strategic PvP. And then there's a new guild privilege system that rewards guilds with bonuses towards crafting, resources, and exclusive consumables. If you're interested in jumping into World of Sea Battle, check the link in the description or the comments, and you'll get an exclusive offer of 5 days of 40% more XP and gold with 6 additional ship slots. But be quick, because it is a limited time offer. Thank you again to Thera Interactive for sponsoring this video and helping the channel stay afloat. Get it? Afloat? Because boats? Okay, let's get our boots back on the ground and get back to the armor ratings. That boots on the ground joke will make more sense in a second. Boots are kinda boring in this game. There's a bunch of repeat effects here. And the worst of them all, at least in my opinion, are the fall distance boots. Rogue, Raider, Nerd, and Miner all give 6 more meters of safe fall distance before you take fall damage. Kinda bad. It's not going to really save you from any really tall falls. It's just going to save you from those occasions where you jump off something a little bit taller than you thought and you take a little bit of damage or a broken leg. Not really worth the slot it takes up though. Then at the mid tier we have the Lumberjack boots. These give you 20% faster stamina regen when running. This translates to being able to run for longer. It's kind of similar to getting the first 2 ranks of Rule 1 cardio. But it's not really that helpful because by the time you do have these boots, you're not going to be doing long distance running because you'll have a vehicle to get away from most zombies. And there's potentially a better option we'll talk about later. We also have Ranger boots. These give plus 60 stamina, which is nice, but it's also kind of mid. It's not super impactful by the time you will have access to the high-end version of these boots. Biker boots are also a bit mid. They give a 20% reduced melee stamina. Decent, but there's better options for melee builds. Now there's only one pair of boots I would call good, but not go so far as to call amazing. These are the Assassin boots, and they provide 100% noise reduction when sprint sneaking, and make the same amount of noise as light armor with medium armor protection. These are very good for stealth builds, but stealth builds in modern 70s die have limited usefulness with all the triggers, and of course, stealth builds do essentially nothing on Horde Night. There's a little caveat to that, but for the most part they do nothing. But if you're doing this build, grab the boots. They make sense. Now for the amazing boots, we have the Preacher boots. These give 20% faster healing of treated injuries. So for example, if you get an abrasion and put some aloe cream on it, it will heal 20% faster. This is pretty solid and you cannot go wrong with that, and it's a lot more versatile, for example, than the Assassin boots, and more impactful than the effects we've had before. The best boots are probably Athlete, Commando, Nomad, or Enforcer, because they all have the same effect. It all depends on which class of armor you like. They all give 20% faster run speed. Good for running away inside POIs, getting some distance between you and the zombies and setting up little defenses, or fighting on Horde Nights without a Horde base. As for which armor class you should use, heavy, medium, or light, it really doesn't matter in 7 Days to Die once you get to the end game stage. And to be clear, you should probably just use whatever armor you have access to until you have access to the really endgame good armors, which is what this video is more about. The Urban Combat book will ensure that you move at the same speed in combat regardless of what armor you're wearing, so the weight differences are kind of negligible. The light armor perk and armor plates will put light armor up to 73% damage resistance. Medium will go up to 77% resistance, and heavy armor is, with no upgrades, just 84% flat. The difference is at most 11%, and the movement speed difference is negligible, so really just use whatever you want. It's not that impactful currently. If you're desperate for skill points, avoid light armor because you do need to use the light armor perk to make it competitive. But while the choice in armor class isn't that important, you should still be more discerning when picking your helmet. The worst helmets aren't bad, they're just redundant, which is kind of on tier with bad. Biker and Commando helmets both give 20% stun resistance. This would be fantastic if it wasn't for the fact that a much better helmet exists and there is no downside to using it. At the mid tier we have the Nomad helmet. This gives 60% less food and water usage. Sounds amazing, but it's honestly kind of meh in the later stages of the game. It only applies to the food and water consumed to restore stamina, not your passive hunger and thirst, which drain over time, nor the food you use to restore health, so you'll still chew through food and water supplies. For the good tier, we have the Assassin Helmet and the Nerd Helmet. The Assassin gives 60% more sneak attack damage. This is excellent if you're using a stealth playstyle, otherwise completely useless. The Nerd Helmet gives 20% more XP, which is good if you do want to level faster, but it isn't always what you want to do, especially later in the game when your build is good enough and any additional levels are just making the game harder. But in my opinion, the best helmet, and probably the one I use 99% of the time, is just the Raider Helmet. This gives 100% stun resistance, as you can see, completely negating the point of the Commando and Biker helmet, since the armor classification doesn't really matter in this game. 100% stun resistance will make you immune to stuns, obviously, which are of course devastating when they happen at a bad time, but they also have a 50% chance to cause concussions, so the Raider helmet gives you complete immunity to 2 debilitating injuries without having to go 10 points deep into fortitude and get 5 ranks of pain tolerance. That's kind of hard to argue with as far as utility goes, but if you are doing pain tolerance anyway, this helmet won't actually help you much, and you should probably go for the Nerd helmet or the Nomad helmet. Though if you do have the max rank of pain tolerance, the specific helmet you wear really doesn't matter that much, because there's not that many good helmet effects anyway. So yeah, Raider helmet, kind of hard to argue with. There's going to be another one that's hard to argue with soon as well. Armor gloves are absolutely terrible, probably the worst armor item in the game. They give 20% more damage with rifles. Not only is that a useless damage boost for a level 6 piece of armor that costs you a legendary part, it's also a hyper-specific weapon type with half a dozen other things that are much better at what it does later in this list. Do not ever use them. Ranger gloves give 50% more revolver and lever action damage. A little bit better, but it's still redundant compared to some of the other options we have here. Assassin gloves, athletic gloves, and lumberjack gloves are all kinda meh. Assassin gives 20% faster swing speed with knives and machetes, and 20% faster fire rate with pistols. This is pretty good, but there is just better things later on. Wouldn't be the end of the world if you chose to wear these for some reason though, and I'll get back to that later. Athletic gloves are plus 50 stamina. Decent, but again, same as the ranger boots, not that important by the time you get them, and there are better options. Lumberjack gloves are interesting because they give a flat plus 15 to axe damage. This is quite situational, but if you are for some reason doing an actual axe build, which is of questionable utility on much harder settings, but if you are, you actually can't go too wrong with the lumberjack gloves. They're very similar to the damage boosts given by a bunch of other things. It's just given in a weird way. Now for the good gloves, we have Raider and Biker. They're identical except Raider has more armor. Both give 60% more melee damage and are obviously a good choice if you're doing a melee heavy build and you want the completion bonuses of either of these armors. But the Commando, Nomad, and Nerd are pretty amazing. Commando gives plus 50% to all range damage, which is arguably more useful at the stage of the game where you'll get these than the last two, because later on in the game people tend towards using guns more. Nomad gives 50% more damage to elite zombies, and while it says it's only for melee, it's lying. I checked, it's not, it's for everything. While elite zombies, which to be clear is radiated or higher, are very specific, it's also worth noting the concept of overkill. You probably only need extra damage to kill elite zombies by the time you're at this stage in the game. You're already one-tapping the ferals and regular zombies, so the damage boost from Nomad is practically still very useful, even though it doesn't apply to weaker zombies. But of course, as everyone probably already knows, the best gloves in this game are the Preacher gloves. They simply make you do 60% more damage to undead, with all weapons against all zombies, vultures, zombie dogs, zombie bears, and even dire wolves. It's obviously the best choice because it has the highest end damage boost tied with the melee weapon boost, but it applies to everything. If you need to hunt a living animal, or if you're playing in 40,000 years when bandits are finally actually added to the game, the Commando gloves are going to be a good choice for all ranged weapons. Right now though, probably just go with Preacher gloves 99% of the time. Though I do know a couple of scenarios that might argue with that, which we'll get to later. Commando is strictly worse than other armor options, and the miner outfit can be replaced with a couple of ranks of miner 69er, which makes mining stamina a complete non-concern. The only niche use case here is if you want to do mining without mining skills for some reason. Scavenger, Nomad, Lumberjack are all mid. They give you 10 more carry capacity, which is excellent if you're pocket modally challenged. Otherwise, skip them for something that actually does something in combat. Assassin and Rogue are good for sneaky sneaks, giving 30% easier sneaking. Solid if you're using that playstyle. Biker, Athletic, and Ranger all give plus 20 health, which is a solid boost to your survivability, but the real best options are going to be the Enforcer, the Preacher, and Raider. Enforcer gives a massive 40% crit resistance. This gives a full suit of Enforcer armor 56% crit resistance. To put that in perspective, regular light armor only has 16%, which is a pretty significant difference. Preacher gives 15% less damage taken from undead, which is a nice extra layer of defense that shortens the gap between it and heavy armor. Then Raider gives you a 50% increase in natural crit healing speed, which is just fantastic and a strict upgrade of what the Commando outfit offers. This means if you have a broken leg, for example, it will heal 50% faster. I wouldn't say any is the absolute obvious best, all three are pretty good. Where we might see some clear victors though is when we apply all of this to the completion bonuses. Before we jump into that, if you want to see me rank all the best melee weapons in 7 Days to Die, hit subscribe so you don't miss it. It's coming in the next couple of weeks, and we started this series with the guns ranking. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll link it above. By the way, we're trying to hit 100k subscribers by the end of the year, and we're making very fast progress. Thanks guys. Anyway, the completion bonuses. For this, we're not just ranking the completion effects in a vacuum because they can never be achieved in a vacuum. You have to rate the entire set's usefulness when put together. This makes a lot of armors score very poorly, but remember that you can always make a custom set and forgo a completion effect altogether if you want more control but want to sacrifice a small bonus. For Farmer, Athlete, and Biker, they're all pretty bad or redundant. Farmer has almost no combat boosts really, but it's here because it does give 40% more health from food, which you can use in combat for a very niche playstyle. You just have to wear a Farmer outfit in combat to do that, and as we mentioned, it's pretty trash for combat. It's mostly a utility suit. Athlete's completion bonus is the same as a singular Nomad helmet, so that's pretty useless unless you happen to be wearing the full suit already. Biker gives 6 armor, which does make it almost as good as heavy armor by a difference of about 1%, but the overall effects of the armor are kind of just redundant compared to others, and the fuel efficiency boost is worthless considering Enforcer gloves exist, so going out your way for it doesn't make the most sense. The Enforcer outfit, even with its 40% crit resist, is mid. The Enforcer outfit gives a bonus damage with 44 weapons, but even with its 40% bonus crit resist, it's kind of mid, and I'll show you why later. The same goes for the Nerd outfit, the Nomad, and the Ranger. They're just not all that helpful as full sets. Commando is good, but every item except its boots is worse than an alternative. However, the completion bonus that lets you heal 3 health per second from medical items instead of just 2 is nice. And the only amazing option is the Assassin. Assassin lets you become hidden 100% faster, which is very good when paired with a sneak perk, and the overall effects of the Assassin armor are fantastic for stealth builds, but again, it's not that common of a build and has a lot of drawbacks currently. The 2 best armor sets, if you're going to use the full set, are going to be the Preacher and the Raider, and here's why. The Preacher hat is completely useless, but it doesn't actually matter. The completion bonus of this armor set is 40% more crit resist, which makes the Enforcer outfit kind of redundant because you can wear the full Preacher set and get the same effect and get a bunch of extra really powerful effects. And it makes you immune to infection, which is very, very useful. Combine it with a 60% damage boost to almost every enemy in the game, 20% faster crit healing speed, and 15% additional damage reduction, and you have an excellent, well-rounded generalist armor set, even considering that the helmet doesn't even have a combat bonus itself. It's just that good. The Raider is the perfect choice if you're going specifically for a tanky melee build. Think of something like a late game Knuckles build or Sledgehammer's build. 100% immunity to stuns and concussions, 50% faster healing of crits, 60% more melee damage across the board, and its completion effect is 45% more crit resistance, giving Raider armor a 72 crit resistance compared to the 29% of other heavy armors. If you're going to go tanky melee, go raider, otherwise go preacher unless you happen to be going sneaky sneaks, in which case go assassin. When the melee weapon ranking drops, it'll be here on screen. Go watch it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.